Chapter 4, Today's Police and Police Agency, an Overview. So, learning objectives. Examine the importance of the public and determine the goals of the police. List the traditional functions of the police agencies. Identify the agency's goals established by police departments as a result of implementing a community policing philosophy. Describe the two basic units that exist in almost every police department and what functions are performed by the unit. Understanding the styles of policing that have traditionally been identified, the new approach being recommended, and why the shift is seen as necessary for today's police and police agencies, explaining how the agent's police image arises. So, today's police and police agencies face unprecedented challenges. Citizens and politicians are clamoring for a re-examination of police role in our society. It's important that the police and the people that they protect, serve, agree on what's should be the nature of the police role. So traditional police and the way things used to be and the way people used to look at policing is not the same. You do have, depending upon where you live in the country, you have various types of groups of people who are anti-police or don't trust the police. And then you have politicians who try to use the police in various capacities, and everybody's wanting to reassess the police and change how they do business and write new policy and new rules. So it's very inconsistent kind of what we have throughout the country, and it can be rather confusing too. But at the end of the day, the police and the community in which it serves, they need to find some common ground. Policing and the people, police authority, police have the right to direct and command. This right comes from the people through the law, their laws and institutions. So when police are out there and they give you a lawful command and tell you to stop, you can't come around and say, what for? I didn't do anything. You can, but when they tell you you have to stop, you have to stop. You never know why they may tell you to stop. Give you an example. You could be walking down the street and dressed a certain way, and unbeknownst to you, somebody just robbed a store who was dressed just like you. They don't know if you're the robber or not. So when they give you a lawful command, you have to stop, and they must come and verify and investigate. These rights comes from people. Basically, when you vote people, the people vote in their politicians and their legislators, and they go in and they pass laws, and these laws are enforced by institutions. So if you want change in your law, in how people police and stuff, a lot of times you need to take a look at the laws and the policies, but sometimes the people you vote in office. Traditional functions of policing: enforce laws, preserve the peace, prevent crime, protect civil rights and civil liberties, and provide services. So these are traditional, and this is what you've seen. If we go all the way back even to the 1800s, some of these things right here show up even back then. Now, of course, you get to more modern day where you're talking about protecting civil rights and civil liberties, and they provide services of all type. Forming proactive and problem-solving partnerships with the citizens they serve to create a healthy and crime-free environment. So realistically, when you see a good functional relationship between the police and the community, this is what you see. They have an agreement, an understanding, a partnership, and they understand that the police are not there to harass or oppress them. They are there to protect them, protect and serve the people. Now, depending upon where you live, if you live in a high crime area or someone lives in a high crime area, they may not perceive it that way because the police are always out there arresting somebody. But when you live in a high crime area, a lot of times that means somebody's out there always committing crime too. So that can be relative and subjective depending upon who you are and where you live and your life experiences. Span of control. So this is when you take a look at span of control. This is taking a look at a traditional police department. Let's look at the chief. From the chief all the way down to the beat officers and the individual uniform officers. So span of control is the number of individuals and resources that one can manage effectively. And because they're set up like a military style, they use a chain of command. So when you look at the internal and external obligations, the internal obligations are dealing with all the various units, the people, and all the budgets and all types of stuff that you have to deal with. External is going to be dealing with the public, politicians, judges, attorneys. They have to deal with all of that. So these obligations that they have. Administrative and field, you have administrative stuff that goes on within the organization that the police chief is also responsible for. And then you have things that transpire in the field services, the different types of units and what they do. They're responsible for all of that. Administrative services. So you got communications. So you look at the roll call. This is some roll call is where the police officers will go to, usually beat officers will go to usually on a daily basis before they start their shift. And they get communication. And they get intelligence about what's going on in the area, on their beats and in the area. And then they take it and go out there. And they do this on a daily basis because things change on a daily basis. Communication devices are the types of things that they use, like their radios, the cell phones. It's very important. Can you communicate with other agencies if you need to? And interoperability is basically how you're working together with the different types of groups within your organization. You have to have relationships with different types of units because you may encounter different types of things. I'll give you an example from the K9 unit, drug sniffing dogs, to the narcotics unit, to the homicide unit, to the robbery unit, to the sexual crimes unit, to the crimes against children unit. Dispatchers, they are the ones who actually bring in information. They take information and they disperse information out and they put it out over the radios. So because you have to keep the officers informed what's going on. They need stuff pronto. So the dispatchers can put stuff out on the radio. Officers can hear it and they can hear things in real time as they're actually happening. Basically, if there's a shooting, there's a stabbing, someone's assaulted a police officer, whatever else. 911 is your emergency system. We all know about what 911 is. Police department is responsible for that. And when those calls come in, they go to the police department and they have people that take these calls, 911 operators, and they get information to the police as needed so they can respond timely. Now you have records. You have administrative, arrest, identification, evidence, and complaint. So we look at the administrative records. These are looking at things that associated with historical records of convictions and things along those lines. Arrest is you have your arrest record to show who's been arrested, when, where, and why. Your identification process, such as fingerprint and photos, evidence, things that seized from the crime scenes. And then you have complaints, whether they're made by citizens or they're made by other agencies. So they have to keep up with all of these records. And there's a Retention of Records Act. I don't know. All of these have to be maintained a certain amount of time. Field services. So let's look at the patrol. I mentioned it earlier, but you got your patrol. These are the people who control in the community, either on foot, most likely vehicle, and sometimes by horses, and sometimes by bicycles and motorcycles. They're in the community. These are the ones who get to know folks in the community on a first name basis. And they're the ones who usually have the best rapport with the community. Traffic. These are the guys who actually patrol the streets and the highways to stay on top of the traffic, to keep people from speeding and driving crazy and doing stuff. But that's all they do is they patrol the streets. Investigations. You got a different type of investigations, whether it be, like I said, homicide, robbery, sexual assault, arson, narcotics. So this is the different types of units that will be doing investigations. Community service and community relations. The larger the police department, the more likely you are to see a whole department dedicated to this. And what they do is they strictly go out there to try to make sure that they keep good relations in the community. So if there's some things that's going on in the community, some kind of turmoil between the police department and the community, these are the people that will go out there. If there's community events going on and stuff, these are people, police officers that will go out there and just be out there and just amongst the people. Specialized officers is when you start getting into people like K9 handlers, narcotics, arson investigators, fire investigators, polygraph, things of that effect, crime scene investigators. Organizational culture, any group demonstrating a specific patterns of behavior that distinguish it from others within society. So every organization has got its own structured organization, cultured organizations. When you see this, police departments are no different than corporate America. They have their own. And a lot of times, the culture is dictated by the leadership, the chief and the deputy chiefs. Their mindset usually dictates how the culture is within the organization, whether it's a good one or whether it's a bad one or whether it's toxic. Usually starts at the top, not the bottom. The thin blue line metaphor that places police officers as the element that separates lawful society and chaos. So when you think of the thin blue line, that's the police officers. Basically, on one side, we have law and order and orderly and law-abiding. On the other side, you have chaos, crime, and stuff. And the police are the thin blue line that separates the two. Styles of policing. You have the enforcer. These are the people, a lot of times if you hear about someone who they use force a lot of times when they need to and when they don't. And when they don't, it's the problem a lot of times. If somebody's ever, a police officer's ever got a history of actually being too physical with people or doing things to people that maybe he shouldn't do, a lot of times that would be someone who would fall in the category of policing or enforcing. The crime fighter would be very similar to that, but they wouldn't quite go as far as the enforcer. The social service agent, this is somebody that will be more inclined to be more understanding with people and really believe in enforcing the law, but they don't believe in being too heavy-handed. The watchdog are the ones who are really kind of lax and laid back. They're the ones who would like to let people get away with a little small stuff because they're like, that doesn't matter. A little small stuff doesn't matter. I'm out here just to make sure the big stuff doesn't happen. So they're more inclined to do that. So you see these different types of styles of policing. A lot of times that's based on personalities of the managers calling the shots in these units. So when we look at the procedural justice, we look at the voice. And the voice is a perception that your side of the story has been heard. The perception that the system players treat you with dignity and respect. Neutrality, perception that the decision-making process is unbiased and trustworthy. Understanding, comprehension of the process and how decisions are made. Helpfulness, perception that the system players are interested in your personal situation to the extent that the law allows. So it's really based on everybody's perception, and everybody's perception is different, whether or not they have a voice, they have respect, and the other things. Stereotypes, police image stereotypes, suspicious. They look at everybody. This is when you look at police officers and you think, well, they look at everybody as being suspicious. Well, it's not necessarily that. What you find a lot of times is the police officers a lot of times are not trusting. They actually allow people to earn their trust, but they don't give it automatically. Cynical, as when you look at the cynical, this is kind of like believing that, well, everybody I come in contact with is kind of bad. And when you see that, that's when someone has a police officer, probably has a negative outlook on life. Indifferent, it's like they don't really care one way or the other, what happens. Authoritarian is being a heavy-handed type of individual, probably more so than you need to be. Kind of disrespectful and kind of, you even as a police officer, you expect respect, you expect to receive respect, but you don't give it to other people. Bigoted, this is somebody who actually has a low regard for for the community that they're policing in. And usually when that's seen and that's evident, it shows itself in multiple ways. That this police officer has a low opinion of the community that which he works in. And usually that's a community that's different than he is. And brutal is just basically when police officers do things and you have a perception that no matter what you do, they're going to beat you. If you just have a speeding ticket and you're doing the speed limit's 35 and you're doing 36, If the police officer pull you over, you truly believe that they're going to beat you because that's what they do. So that's a brutal image. And we have seen incidents before in the past in this country and other countries where the police have literally been brutal and beat somebody. And a couple of times they beat them to death. That concludes this chapter.